So you mentioned like simpler things tend to work out and like they give great results. So this is still more related to like the development side and stuff. But what were some business practices that might seem very obvious, but you personally had a hard time adapting them? Or like what were some of the business practices that you wish you had adapted sooner?
Well, I think especially early on, I guess I focused a little bit too much on the tech side, and I got a little bit of tunnel vision in the sense that I was focused on building the product. But I made the usual mistake of having an idea and then just building it, without really talking to actual users and without really thinking about like the market, who my target user is. And that's one thing I learned is like, you got to really know who you're building it for and, how many of those people there are, where they are, so that you can think about how to actually distribute what you're building to them. That is huge, like marketing distribution, like I said. When I initially released JapanDev, it was pretty different from the current site. There were no jobs, actually. It was literally just like kind of a Glassdoor type site where it was like, I want to tell people about the good companies here in Japan. They offer actually good environments for English speakers, people not from Japan who want to work here in Japan, right? And avoid like kind of the older school Japanese companies that you may or may not have heard of, some horror stories about, right?
Black companies.
Quote unquote black companies, right? Because everyone's heard about that and like the Japanese work culture, right? And I realized like, wow, there's so many great companies here that yes, you have to be careful. You got to search and make sure that, you're working for somewhere that's more international if that's what you're looking for. But let me try to like share that with people. And it just came as a result of like my own job search and everything. I learned more and more about the market every time. I had this like big Trello board of like companies that I personally was interested in. I was like, I should just like share this. So that was the original MVP. It was literally just like, here's 50 companies that I'm kind of vouching for and saying these are actually good places to work, globally competitive. They offer actually good environments for people like us. And people looked at the site. It got some decent buzz, right? People were like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, like I'll check out these companies. But then it became very clear quickly that people were like, okay, cool. Like, where's the apply button? How do I actually apply? And I was like, oh, people don't want a list of companies. They literally just want jobs, right? They want something a level beyond that. And I kind of did want that, but I realized that like that it's a market of one, literally just myself, right? And of course, there's always going to be some people like that, but you actually have to figure out what the market truly wants. So not checking with people, just building too much without thinking about the market. And like, of course, I had no plan for like distribution or any of that kind of stuff. I was just kind of hoping, I'll put it out there and hopefully people would just use it, So I kind of figured some of that stuff out later, but I'm still not particularly strong at like the marketing side of things. And I think that's something that a lot of engineers do. So that would be my advice for people. If you're an engineer, you're looking to start a company, like really, really think about the market and who your target customer is. I know it sounds cliche. And everyone's like, oh yeah, I know to do that. I knew you were supposed to do it. I didn't. No one actually does. That's the thing. Everyone knows in their head, yeah, that's the thing you got to do. You got to have like a persona and like know who your target user is, right? Like I know. It's like, do you though? Who is it? They're like, and that's basically, that's the situation I was in. And I figured it out kind of after the fact. But yeah, I made all those mistakes. So essentially what I had to do was pivot and say like, okay, this isn't going to work. By the way, like this is supposed to be a B2B service. I'm going to get money from the companies, and companies are very, very strict about their like public image, right? So that was also just like a complete non-starter. I had this feature where you could do like kind of essentially reviews, kind of like Glassdoor, where it's like you can kind of write out pros and cons of the different companies and stuff. And yeah, that's never going to work. Like as a business, companies, for some reason, Glassdoor is like big enough to do it, I guess. But in this like tiny niche, right? Companies aren't just going to be like, oh yeah, totally. Like write whatever you want about us. We'll put our logo on there. Just let your users just say whatever they want. So yeah, there were just so many like issues like that. At some point, though, I guess you just have to throw up an MVP in order to kind of force those issues out into the open, and then you can kind of figure them out too. So that was another mistake I made. Like I was screwing around with Kubernetes, like literally setting up a Kubernetes cluster for this thing that could have been a static site. It probably there would have been so many benefits to literally just building as like a static, super simple site. It barely ever needs like any kind, like it doesn't have accounts or anything. Yeah, I was like screwing around with Kubernetes for like 6 months before I actually released it, and just all those mistakes, especially that I think engineers tend to make. But yeah, I made them all. Yeah.
Sorry, you brought an interesting point about knowing who your customers are and how to find them before you build a product. Now that you already have some experience and you are also building VC lists, so do you have like some kind of checklist that you go through before you start building a product or start developing on a new idea?
So for me, I think Twitter has proven to be very powerful. I don't have a huge following yet, but it's one thing I'm trying to actually invest more in. I think for people like me who are like kind of developers, not marketers or business people, it's a lot easier to just kind of do stuff and then tweet about it and just say, I'm doing this. And that, for whatever reason, I think that gets a lot of engagement from people. They are interested in that. You can come to them with problems and say, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about adding this new feature. Should I do that? Yes or no? You can do polls. You can just like ask people. You can kind of crowdsource answers to questions that you're having. That actually works really well. And that actually is a form of marketing without having to like go down the sort of marketing, I guess, rabbit hole, right? And actually learn like all the stuff that like you would learn if you were in like a degree program, right? I think that's a really good way for me and something that I'm trying to do more. Just like basically building in public. For whatever reason, people see you doing that and just sharing it. And they're like, hey, like, cool. They want to help out. So I think that's one of the best ways personally, just because of all the like different types of marketing, because you can do paid ads and you can do guest posts on blogs and like go super deep into SEO and all that kind of like, there's a million different ways to approach it. And I think for developers, people like me, maybe the easiest one is to just like talk about what you're doing. You know, it doesn't really take any special knowledge. You don't have to study. You just literally do a thing and then say, hey, I did this thing. I'm thinking about doing this other thing. What do you guys think? And they'll tell you. So that's worked well for me. One of my idols, Peter Levels, he's done that amazingly well. So I'm kind of trying to learn from people like that and get a little bit better at it.
I guess it also like feels more genuine. It's not like you are spamming your followers with some random crap about your product or somehow trying to convince them to buy your product. Your followers also get a say in what you will build in your product. So that also, I think, plays a big role.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, yeah, they'll suggest other ways, other kind of similar features that they want. And you're like, oh, wow, I didn't think of that. It works well in my experience.